Cool. We're recording. All right, man.
All
Uh,
right.
awesome. Let's get started. Thanks for coming on, dude. So
Thanks.
this is the first podcast of I guess, the aviation podcast that I'm doing. You know me for the audience. My name's Omar Amin. Um, my background been in aviation since I was a teenager. Family, uncle, cousin, pilots, and so I got into aviation at an early age. Started flying around John Wayne in the 90s, started flight instructing in the early 2000s, and then early 2003 got hired at SkyWest, was there for about 10 years and flew the EMB 120, the turboprop guys. They don't have those around anymore. And then transitioned to the RJ and flew around here and there in the RJ. Fun times. Um, so Omar, I'm gonna mess this up again. Azamy,
Zami, yeah.
Azamy. Okay, I want to get it right. Omar Azamy, welcome. Delta Airlines A320 pilot, Airbus. You're based in Minneapolis.
Yep.
Okay, and you and I have known each other now. What? How long has it been? It's
Oh,
flown by, huh?
probably 12, 13 years now.
God,
I
man,
think
getting old. Look at the
maybe more
great,
since I
great.
was in college.
Yeah,
So,
crazy, huh? So I'll just kind of start with the podcast is about um talking about how you got to where you are because you're a Delta, man. You're at the cream of the crop. You're a lot of these guys, they aspire to be where you are. And I'm constantly helping them with this goal that they have because I was there for 10 years. And I figured let's have a bunch of you guys on the show so that you could give your opinion. I want them to understand that it's not just one path that's going to get you there. Like, I want them to hear from several different people that are where they want to be and to see that there's no two paths that are alike. You're going to have struggles along the way. You're going to have all these things. So I wanted to kind of talk about, how you got to where you are. We'll start out. Looks like you did your flight training in Mesa, Arizona. You went to Arizona State University from 2004 to 2008. Tell me about that. What was the experience like? How was it?
well, actually, first off, back to you doing this. I wish we had something like this when I was, in high school or getting ready for college. Um, I was born and raised in Phoenix, and I always wanted to be a pilot. So when it came time to graduate from high school, I just told my dad, I'm going to go to the local flying school and be a pilot. And he said, no, you have to get a college degree. So not knowing as much as, as the information that's available now wasn't available to me. I just went and saw, oh, Arizona State has a flying program. So
Right.
I just signed up for it.
Yeah.
Um, the training was good. It was in partnership with Mesa Airlines. So it was Mesa Pilot Development. And then you got your 4-year degree through ASU. And it was the best of both worlds. You got to go to a, a big university, and at the same time, you did your flight training. It was busy for sure, but being local, where I grew up, and going to a big name university and doing my flying all at once, it was good for me. Um, and I really can't complain about the program. It got me to where I needed to. It got me all the way through my CFII, and it kind of set us up to get those CFI jobs uh, in our senior year or upon graduating from college.
Right. Yeah. I get a lot of resumes from CFIs that are getting ready to graduate university, like University of North Dakota, uh, Baylor, like all these aviation universities. When they're about to come out, the smart ones, they send me their resumes. Like 6 months before they graduate, they do the networking.
Yeah.
They were listening to somebody saying start your networking early. So I get these resumes and they're like, hey, I'm going to finish around summer. Do you need a CFI? That type of thing. I like that. That's good. Awesome. So you flight instructed in the Arizona area, in the Phoenix area?
Yeah, so my senior year of college, I got a job at Deer Valley Airport, which is in North Phoenix.
Right.
It's kind of where I live, where I'm from. And if you remember, this is 2007. This is when the
Oh,
regional airlines were hiring guys 250 hours,
oh
but
God.
I couldn't go anywhere because I had to finish school.
Right.
So I was actually pumping gas at the airport. I was working at an FBO,
Yeah.
and and you probably remember that the hiring was crazy everywhere. The schools couldn't keep their CFIs,
Right.
so I learned to fly in low wing airplanes, Pipers, Bonanza, Baron.
Yeah.
So I just walked my resume over to the flight school across the airport there, and I just said, "Hey, do you need any CFIs?" And the guy looked at my resume and he said, "Have you ever flown a Cessna?" I said, "No." And he said, "Well, come in next week. Let's fly a Cessna, and then we'll go from there." So I
Wow.
called a friend of mine who had a Cessna. So he took me up a couple laps around the pattern. I had some pretty good firm landings, and went and interviewed the next week, and my landings are still firm, and they hired me. And and I taught for those guys for through my senior year of college,
Right.
uh, and that was 2008 when things got
Yeah.
kind of bad.
Yeah. We went through some bad times, man. For a while there, the financial crisis. When we went through the financial crisis, I don't know. Would you say it was like 2008 was the start of it, something like that? The warning
It
signs were.
was it was the summer of 2008, and
Yeah.
I graduated in May, I believe, and I had two interviews, one with ASA, which is not around anymore,
Right.
and Mesa Airlines.
Yeah.
And so, here I am, I'm all psyched. Okay, I'm going to the airline soon. And ASA calls first. So this would have probably been in June. And hey, sorry, we're canceling class or interviews. So I said, okay, that's fine. I still have Mesa.
Right.
So I go and I interview Mesa, and they offer me a class. And I said, okay, that, I'm going to go fly the CRJ. My parents throw me this big going away party because I'm going to be moving to Washington, D.C. to fly in the United system. And Mesa was shutting down Air Midwest at the time. It was one of their Beach 1900
Yeah.
operations. So they call us back and they say, hey, guys, we don't have a class for you right now. They just kind of put us on hold. So I go back to the flight school and say, hey, I'm not leaving, when I said I was leaving. And they were really good. They said, that's fine. Well, then the Mesa thing turned into, who knows if we're even going to call you, because now things are starting to get bad. And finally they called and they said, we have a class for you. It's July, 20 something. It was the end of July. So I went, we're in ground school, and it's August 3rd. It's 2 days before my birthday. And we come in and we see that all the Delta stuff is gone. And they had just lost their contract with Delta flying the Dash 8 out of New York. So sure enough, I was an intern there. And, normally one of the big guys comes in and talks to the class. Well, they're like, he's not coming in today. So-and-so is coming in. I turned to my friend next to me. I said, hey, I think we're getting furloughed.
That's not a good sign, man.
And sure enough, they came in, collected our badges and everything. And that's how it started. I mean, that's how this journey is, right? There's going to be ups and downs. And
Yep.
that's how it started for me in 2008 and many of my friends.
I got lucky. In 2008, I was a CRJ captain based in O'Hare, and I was at relatively senior in the base. I was like 25%.
Okay.
So I held my weekends off. I did. I commuted out of LAX, or excuse me, no, Orange County, because I live in Orange County. I live a mile from the airport. I commuted out of Orange County on Monday mornings,
Yeah.
and I started my trips at 2 p.m. I did 3-day trips, sometimes a 4-day trip. I'd be done at 2 p.m. Wednesday, Thursday, hop on a flight back home 8 p.m. I was like living the dream, dude.
I was jealous of you in those days. I
20
remember.
28-year-old CRJ, and I was holding 700, 900 lines. I don't even fly in the 500, the 200.
Yeah.
I was getting these nice trips, dude. We did like Chicago, Edmonton, San Francisco layover, and next day would be another two legs. It was like mainline flying basically. So I got lucky, and then in '09 in 2010, this stuff was getting worse and dragging on. I didn't feel so scared because I looked at the seniority list and I was like number 900 out of like 2,500. I think SkyWest has like over 5,000 pilots now. It's insane how many pilots they have.
Wow.
So I felt pretty safe. I was like, all right, I'm not going to lose my job. But I didn't know what was going to happen in terms of seniority. So I ended up having to work weekends. I went down to like 50% seniority in base. And then it slowly started turning around. But, I was lucky, man. I was in the left seat. I was still under 30 and I had nothing to complain about. So I was chilling, having a good time. And I think in 2012 or something, we opened Houston, or
Okay.
2011 or 2010. It was when United and Continental merged, and there was a whole big controversy behind that because when United merged, Continental didn't allow 70 seaters to be flying. They only had approval for 50 seaters for the regional airlines.
Okay.
So of course, United said, "Well, we're one airline now." There was a little gray area on whether you could fly 70s or not. So while that was all getting worked out with the lawyers and stuff, they were sending us in there in Houston flying 70s for United Express, and it was a tense moment at times, man. We were, it all worked itself out. Everything was fine after that. Started flying out of Houston, and then we actually opened Phoenix, and I did Phoenix for 6 months.
I
I could
remember
not
that.
take your summertime, bro. I left.
I remember that.
I was dying like a cockroach in the summertime. I was like, we didn't park in the gate sometimes. We got the hard stand.
Okay.
Oh my God, man. It was brutal. So I left. I went back to Houston. But yeah, definitely that time was pretty crazy, man. So you went on from flight instructing, looks like New Mexico Airlines flying a Cessna Caravan. Tell us about that.
So after we got furloughed, I went back to the flight school for a short amount of time. And at that time, all of a sudden, all these students that we had, it just dried up. So the school was overstaffed. We weren't flying much. I mean, it was nice they took us back, but there wasn't much work. So a friend of mine who also had gotten laid off from, he was at Comair, I believe. He finds his job in Albuquerque, New Mexico, flying Cessna Caravans to all these small towns, essential air service routes. So I put in an application and they called. So I get in my car and I drove to Albuquerque, interviewed and got the job. I'd never done anything like that. I was wired that I was going to go become a CFI, go fly for some regional airline, and then I was going to go fly for some major airline. And here I am in Albuquerque, New Mexico, of all places, in ground school in December, learning the Cessna Caravan, which was actually a lot of fun. But at the time, you're thinking, is this it? Is this what I'm going to be doing for a long time?
Yeah.
But in hindsight, that experience was a great. We'd fly to like 4 little towns in Albuquerque. We had the keys to the airport. We would check the passengers in. We would load their bags into the airplane. I mean, you were the pilot, the flight attendant, the
Yeah.
gate agent. I mean, you did the dispatcher. You did everything.
Awesome.
So,
That was cool. How did you end up? So where'd you go from New Mexico Airlines?
so I was there for about a year, and then they had an operation in Georgia, and they needed somebody out there. And I was honestly tired of living in Albuquerque, so I wanted something different, and I wanted different flying. So I moved to Georgia, where they base us in Athens, where the University of Georgia is.
Yeah.
Same thing, Cessna Caravan, Essential Air Service,
Right.
but we were flying into Atlanta Hartsfield,
Ooh.
and I wanted that experience, and I wanted the instrument time. Albuquerque was VFR,
Right.
90% of the time,
Yeah.
but with Atlanta, you were getting instrument time. You were flying approaches. So I was in Georgia for 6 months, and going back to pumping gas at an FBO, at the end of 2009, the company that I used to work for, they were hiring a SIC on their King Air. And I called my old boss and I said, hey, you have to help me get this job.
Right.
He said, send me over your resume, and sent him over the resume. And I was in Macon, Georgia on the ramp, and they sent me an email for an interview, and I was like dancing on the ramp because this is in the end of 2009. Half of my friends don't have jobs, and the other half are flying, whatever. I mean, at that time, to get a job at Ameriflight was you were competing with furlough Continental guys and other
Great,
major
right?
airlines. Yeah. Um, and so that set me up for my next job, which was flying charter and some Part 91 in King Airs out of Phoenix. And so I did that. I got hired as a right seat guy. 3 months into it, it was right place at the right time. One of the guys left and they needed a captain and I had the flight time. So 23 years old, they got me my ATP, and I was flying people by myself in a King Air to Mexico and things of that nature. And that was a lot of fun, man.
That's that's one thing I want to point out. You said exactly what I tell these guys all the time: right place at the right time. A lot of people don't realize that, yeah, you do get lucky, right? But you chose to leave Albuquerque for another opportunity. It was a risk. You were like, there's something that doesn't look better on paper. It's different, but I think it's an improvement. It's a risk. Let me go take it. You took a big risk leaving where you were and going there and starting over. Maybe not in the same starting over another company, but moving. And so you put yourself at the right place at the right time. So it was hard work that you put in to put yourself in that position of luck. A lot of people look at me and they say, dude, you got hired at 23 at SkyWest. You got lucky. I go, are you kidding me? Do you know what it took I had to throw bags for SkyWest in the
Yeah.
summertime in Palm Springs in 125-degree weather. I was loading Brazilias on the tarmac. I was loading CRJs. I was waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, driving to Palm Springs from Orange County, working till 12 p.m., driving back to Orange County, flight instructing. And I put myself at the right place at the right time. That's the key with this stuff, man. Nothing's going to be handed to you. You have to go out there and put yourself out there in enough places. And one of your attempts to succeed is going to hit, and you're going to cash in that lotto ticket.
And to kind of touch on what you're saying with your SkyWest and working for them, really, that's how I got the corporate job. I worked the ramp in college, and that was my intention was, eventually I'm going to meet somebody that's going to say, hey, I need an FO, or, hey, you want to come build time with me? Or the company I was working for, they had a charter fleet. And sure enough, 2 years later, when I had some flight time, it paid off. I was able to call somebody I know, and it was that quick that I called my line manager. He went to the flight ops chief pilot, said, hey, I know this guy. He worked for us before. He was a good employee.
Yeah.
And that was it. It wasn't, I came in for an informal, just to get to know you interview, but they knew me. And those graveyard shifts in college, fueling airplanes at night and medical airplanes and helicopters, it did pay off. If you throw enough things at the wall, something's going to stick.
That's exactly it, man. That's exactly it. So how did you get to Delta? Where was the hop to Delta?
I did the charter thing for about a year,
Okay.
2010 to 2011. In 2011, the regional airlines started hiring again.
Okay.
And so I said, you know what, I'm going to try it again.
Okay.
And after living in Georgia, I wanted to go back to Georgia. And I still had this thing of, I want to go fly for ASA. So I applied, and they called me, and I got an interview, flew me down to Atlanta.
Yeah.
It was a 2-day interview, almost like the Delta interview, but some differences. Anyways, go through the sim. They offer me the job, and I'm excited. And then they call back and say, well, this is at the time that ASA and ExpressJet had become one company. My whole goal at that point was to move to Georgia. And they said, well, we need pilots for the ExpressJet side of the operation. You'll be based in Chicago. And I said yes. I said yes, but I also had another interview lined up, and that was with Compass Airlines. I hadn't heard of Compass Airlines. Again, back to networking. My old flight instructor was at Compass Airlines, and they were started up by Northwest when they were in bankruptcy, and they were flying Embraer 175s out of Minneapolis. So this Compass Airlines calls me. I fly into Minnesota. I'm looking out the window. I've never seen so much snow in my life. I mean, what is this place? And I go through the interview, and and I start comparing the two. They offered me the job, and I start comparing the two. And ExpressJet ASA was this really big airline, and Compass only had maybe 300 pilots at the time because they had a flow through deal with Northwest Delta. Now, when I got hired, that wasn't available to me because I got hired post Delta Northwest merger.
Yeah.
But I knew that at some point when Delta hires, these guys on the top, they're all gone. 20 a month are gone. So I took the risk of, I'm going to go to the smaller airline because there could be movement.
A lot of movement.
For the first 2.5 years I was there, 2011 and 2013, it was stagnant. They canceled an order of airplanes they were supposed to get. So commuting to reserve in Minneapolis, it was cold. And I was starting to doubt, well, did I make the right call? Last year I was flying my King Air down to Cabo and going to a resort. And now I'm, sitting in Minneapolis. But I knew it was a matter of time. Delta was going to start hiring. And sure enough, they did. And all of a sudden I went from this junior FO to every month, my numbers just going up and going up. And about 3 years in, I got my captain upgrade.
Nice.
And it was in Los Angeles.
I remember that.
Yeah. So, and then it kept going. I missed that flow up by about 25 guys. Yeah. So when I left, and then we got flying for American Airlines all at the same time. It was just this massive, massive growth. So here I went from 65% first officer to I'm almost to the first page of the seniority list, So I was with Compass 5.5 years. I did the first 2.5 years in Minneapolis. And then when they opened LA, I went out there, and then I was a captain in LA for about another year or so. And my wife is from Minnesota. So when we got engaged, I decided to transfer back, and I transferred back to Minneapolis as they were shrinking the base. Delta was moving us to Seattle, LA. They were building a pretty big presence on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So this is about 2015, 2016. I get a job, or I interview for a job as a sim instructor with Compass, because at this point I've got my flight time, I've got all that stuff, but your resume has to stand out. They can get 10,000 resumes that say this guy has this much captain time and this time and jet time. But so my thing was, with my wife being in Minnesota and me most likely living here, I was going to become a simulator instructor. And I was doing some seat fill stuff and I enjoyed it. So I applied, I interviewed, I got the position. And sure enough, 3 weeks later, I land in Austin, Texas, and we pull into the gate, and I open my email, and it says, invitation to interview in Atlanta at the Delta headquarters. And I'm looking at my first officer, and my mouth is just like open. I'm like, this is not real. Can you read this?
Reality check.
Yeah, but then it became real. Then it was like, okay, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. You do not want to mess this up. Wow. And I went hardcore into the books. So this is early 2016. I'm getting married that summer, and my Delta interview is 3 weeks after my wedding. That was a stressful time.
Wow. Awesome. And then obviously you interviewed and you got the job, and here you are.
Yeah, I got the job. I prepped enough for the interview. There's so much good information online now that you can prep and be ready for it.
Right.
I got hired in July of 2016.
Yeah.
And the way we do seniority at Delta as a new hire is, most places I've always been, it's been by age, but Delta does Social Security. So I get into class, and my Social Security starts with the number 9. So I'm the number 1 guy in the class.
Nice.
And I got to pick my airplane. So I chose the Airbus because I knew that Minneapolis has a big Airbus presence, and this is eventually where I wanted to be.
Right.
I spent the first 2.5 years in New York, commuting from Minneapolis, and been based in Minneapolis ever since. And I'll tell you what, man, it's for all these students that are working towards it, it's
Right.
everything that you imagine it is. You know, it's a great job. We're lucky to be doing what we do.
Right. So if I understand this correctly, you started at ASU 2004 and you were at Delta in 2016.
Correct.
So I just want to point out to the viewers, 12 years it took you from the time you entered to where you got to where you wanted to be. This stuff does not happen overnight. There's a lot of investment of your time required and a lot of effort. So a lot of people they don't realize the road it takes to get to your dream job. Yeah, there are some people that they maybe get very lucky, and or maybe their dad's a chief pilot or something, like some strong connection. And that's something I want to point out. I can't tell you how many times that I was sitting in the left seat of the CRJ and it was like year 7, year 8, year 9, year 10. You're like, oh my God, dude, I'm going to have the highest CRJ left seat time in the industry. When am I going to get hired at, some mainline stuff? You see a brand new co-pilot and he's like, I'll be at Delta next year. And you're just like laughing, like, dude, what are you talking about? And it's like, so it's important that people understand, you know, it's a long road. You got to be in it for the long haul. You got to put in the effort. That's important. And yeah, right place at the right time. A little bit of luck for sure, man. Um, anything fun happen at Delta? Any kind of flying that stands out to you that you're like, wow, that's kind of cool.
I think you've seen me post pictures of it every once in a while, but Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I mean,
That's beautiful, man.
it's beautiful. It's great in the summertime. As a matter of fact, I just was through there 2 days ago, and I fly with these senior guys that they'll do it in the summer, and they say, "Oh, I'm not going there in the winter." And I'm always like, "Well, if it's that bad, you're not gonna go, right?"
Yeah,
Well, sure enough, just 2 days ago, man, I landed there with about a 23 knot crosswind.
yeah. I was
That
gonna say
it was exciting, you know.
so I remember Jackson Hole because when I was upgrading in the Brasilia in 2006, we were in training, and of course, when you first time you upgrade, they know at the regionals that it's your first captain position, and you got all these passengers, so they're trying to prepare you for leadership, and they're trying to mentor you and trying to teach you all this stuff. They had this captain come in, or maybe it was on video or something. This captain was going to Jackson Hole on a trip in the Brasilia. I think it was either from Denver or from Salt Lake City. And so he's talking about how he's coming in Jackson Hole and he hit the worst imaginable wind shear winds, terrible, terrible winds you could imagine, extreme turbulence. He said the airplane was shaking so violently that we couldn't see gauges. It was just blurry. And they had the triple chime oral warnings going off, you get when its oil pressure's low because the oil is just sloshing inside the engine. And so he said the only thing that I could think of was get the hell out of here. And so he took the airplane and just applied max power and tried to climb out of there. And so, I mean, they diverted, they went back and they realized maintenance downloaded, all the data from the engines because they over torqued the engines. It was a turboprop. They had gone to 122% torque on the engines.
Wow.
And I remember they were asking him, like, there's always somebody that asks, like, a question. You're like, somebody asked him, why did you go to 122% on the torque? I think it was maybe a mechanic or something. And he looked back at him and said, because I couldn't go to 123%.
I had to use whatever I had.
I've been in that situation. I'm sure all of us have. We're just, oh Jesus, right? You have this oh Jesus moment. So
Yeah.
yeah, Jackson Hole, it's so beautiful though. It's gorgeous.
But places like that, they kind of test your skills a little bit too, you know. Going into the mountains on a 6,000 foot runway, it's different. It's fun, but it's different for sure.
That's where the experience of flying in, Albuquerque, New Mexico comes into place when you're getting slammed by severe winds in your caravan and all those years in a turboprop in your King Air and all this stuff. Because now you're at the big leagues, right? You're at Delta. You got all these people behind you, and you're coming into a 6,000-foot runway and as high elevation. You got to be on your A game. You can't mess around, man. And I always say, like, I'm a big Kobe fan. You know, I got him hanging on my wall over there. Um, you got if you make something hard look easy, you're good at it. And you're a professional. And you guys at Mainline, nobody ever thinks about what it took to get them there when they're sitting in the back, and that's because you guys are professionals. You make it look easy. So, I, someday, you never know. I might go back, man. I might sling gear for you someday. Right?
You're more than welcome to. You're more.
You
Who
know,
knows?
so,
Maybe I'll
yeah,
do it for you one day. You never know.
I would love to, man.
Always
All
be
right, man.
nice to FOs.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time coming on here and sharing some war stories and sharing your path of how you got there. Yeah, when you come to Orange County, definitely give me a ring and let's go grab a beer or a burger or something. And
Yeah, it was good to catch up, man, and good luck to all your students, and they'll all be here too one day, one way or another. So
thank you. Do you have any advice for the students you want to give before we sign off?
I would say if this is what you want to do, you just don't give up. It might take some patience at some points, but don't give up. You will get here. You don't know where this road is going to take you, but ultimately you will get to where you want to be.
Awesome, awesome. All right, Omar. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
All right, take it
I'll see
easy.
you
Bye
in
bye.
California.
Bye.